These two are the two that I'm worried about.
Let's be real, I only dress nicely like once a week.
Because I'm a sucker for an artisanal Scotch egg. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Becca, you're dreaming, and I think you're right. But we have two pairs. I'm a real... Whoa, I am so sorry, guys. It is the final day of the Bookathon. Okay, so this is the third 2022 Bookathon vlog. Hopefully will just be a week. Maybe a little bit longer though, because this is also going to be the third installment in the Is the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship Worth My Time series. So this one is very delayed. I should have done this in June, but the 3 books that we're going to be reading, 2 of them I'm not actually very excited about, although I have heard good things. They're just not anything that I would ever have picked up for myself. So if you guys have never seen one of these before, I'm a subscriber of the monthly Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship subscription, and in that every single month you get a brand new science fiction or fantasy hardback that is also an exclusive edition and a signed and numbered like limited edition first edition. Hello, honey. Oh, what do you want? What do you want? You want some food and you can't have food because you're too chubby, they say. So the reason why I make these vlogs is because I actually pay for the subscription. It costs about £27, but I do live in the UK where it's shipped from, and that price is including shipping. But if I'm paying for a subscription service every single month, I want to be holding myself accountable to actually reading the books. And when we started this series, that is what I was doing. I was just holding myself accountable to reading the books. I wasn't actually expecting to maybe possibly find out that the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship is not worth my money. But if you saw the last installment of this, it was a wash. It was a whole wash. I won't spoil it if you haven't seen it, but I will link it in the description box. And as I said, I'm not overly hyped about 2 of the picks we're going to be reading in this installment. So what we're aiming for with this, I will put the chart up here so that you guys can see it, but what I'm aiming for is half of the books that I read while I'm making this series have to be 4 stars or above, otherwise there's no point me paying for this subscription every month. But I am going to be reading 3 books, and I will tell you a little bit more about what they're actually about as I'm reading them. But these 3 are also all books that are on my Bookathon TBR, which is great because I spent 18 days reading a massive chunky adult high fantasy that was not on my Bookathon TBR, and I am sorely failing my own readathon right now. But luckily I am currently, with the weather turning, I'm wearing a jumper and I'm actually still cold. It's a wonderful time, but I'm very much in the mood for fantasy, which I'm hoping is going to lend itself really well to this vlog. But the first book I'm going to be reading is The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. This one is historical fantasy about Marie Antoinette and her sister, and this was the Goldsboro book for March. I have already started this one. I'm only 12 pages into it. It's so far so good, and that's all I can tell you kind of right now. The book for April was Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. This one is once again a historical fantasy that is set in the 1920s, and I think it's a little bit of a Gatsby retelling, and I think, don't quote me on this until I've read it, but I think it might be queer. And then the final one is The Collarbone by Rebecca Zahabi. This one is adult fantasy, like a standard high fantasy, I believe, following 2 characters. One of them is coloured and one of them has tattoos, and I think the one who has tattoos can't remember why. Very typical kind of like high fantasy synopsis on this one. So going into these 3, these 2 are the 2 that I'm worried about. This one, I actually really like The Great Gatsby, so I think there's a possibility that I could enjoy this one. This one, I'm really not sure about. Now, like I said, 12 pages in, so far so good, but on the surface of this, don't care about Marie Antoinette, don't like historical fantasy, doesn't sound very exciting. It's about Marie Antoinette and her sister who find this book of spells, and so far they're trying to use the book of spells to stop their mother from making one of them marry a prince that they don't want to marry. Really doesn't sound like my thing, but I have heard amazing things about it, including from people who also thought they weren't going to like this one. And then the one that I do think that I'm going to enjoy, the one that I think will be my favorite of these 3, is The Collarbone, because this is more like just the typical thing that I would read anyway. So predictions, I think I'm going to enjoy this one the least. This one has potential for me to enjoy it a lot, but I'm not 100% sure. And this one I actually think I'm going to enjoy. So like I said, I'm starting with The Embroidered Book. For the Bookathon, this one fulfills the prompt to read a book with a patterned cover. And yeah, I'll give you some more information when I'm a little bit of the way into this one. These kids, I feel like this girl got trapped, and it made me really angry to read. I was like,
I really, and I'll get into like why they're assholes later. I know like bits and pieces in this case. I never knew that. Yeah, she had something called PHPV, and people with PHPV have bad like hazy vitreous that stops light from passing to the back of the eye because it never goes away. And in her case, she was totally blind. Yeah, in the right eye. And it can often be seen in premature babies. And I guess she wore contacts.
Honey, I like moving out of state, I went out of my mind. Took a few nights, blew all my money without even trying. You said to follow dreams, didn't want to leave as much as you wanted. I'll go so I can face my fear, knowing you'll never care if I'm alone. Cause I couldn't sleep when he says everything else in your life didn't care about anything. Middle of the week, 40 ounce, and I'm dancing in the street like you're now waking up in another person's room. We both know it's toxic, turn the clock back to the times we know. Stranded in bed, homesick cause you are my home. Moved to a city where they don't know LA. I was being nice and I needed a change of pace. I believed in your hopes, you needed the most. Held back my own cause I always came second. So
Good afternoon. Happy, I think it's Wednesday. I'm not too sure, but my working day is drawing to a close. I'm currently exporting my 28-minute guide to the realm of the Earthlings, which I said I think at the end of last week's vlog that I was making. And I hope I've done it justice. You know, you'll have to let me know if you watched it. I didn't feel like I was as eloquent as I can be, and if you make videos, you can probably relate, but sometimes you sit down in front of the camera and you are fire. Like everything comes out perfectly, hardly any mistakes, exactly what you want to say, and then sometimes you're a stumbling, mumbling mess. And I feel like I was more on the latter today, when that's the kind of video where like you want to be fire when you're filming it, you know what I mean? But it is 4:54 and I think I'm actually going to go and take Brie for a walk now so I don't have to do it later, because it is a workout day today. But my knee's been really sore recently, but in a strange way. So like I had a trampoline incident, like super minor, when I was 13, but like I cracked both of my knees essentially. My knees have not been the same since, and it's normally my left knee that's worse than my right, but for the last week and a half I've just had a lot of pain like around the perimeter of my knee, mainly when I'm sat down though. So like you guys know my main exercise is spin. I can spin fine, which usually when my knees are acting up, it hurts. I can spin fine, it doesn't bother me. But if I sit down on a chair normally, like with my legs bent, my knee really hurts after like about 5 minutes. So I don't really know what to do with it, and I don't know to what degree I should rest it, because it doesn't hurt when I walk, it doesn't hurt when I work out. I did cancel leg day because I can't do squats or lunges or anything like that, but like I said, it mainly hurts when I'm either just sat still or climbing upstairs. So yeah, I don't know. I really just don't know what I've done to it, because the day before it started hurting I did work out, but it was an upper body workout, so it had nothing to do with my knees, and I'm really confused by that. So yeah, I don't want to have to walk Brie and work out after dinner. Cannot be bothered, because I'm actually in a really good reading mood and I want to read, but I haven't been reading. So weirdly, surprise I'm enjoying this. I like it, I really do. I'm 116 pages into it, so around 20%, and you know, it's decent, which I didn't think I would say. I thought I would be really bored by it, but somehow I'm really interested. And it's not even because it has other things going on aside from the historical stuff. I'm actually really interested in how everything's going to play out, because I think something that's actually made me more interested, I did like the writing to start off with, so that was keeping me hooked. But something that's made me more interested is that I've actually kind of maybe spoiled myself a little bit for this book by looking up the real people that have inspired the characters. So the two sisters are Marie Antoinette, and my history is shocking, so if I get anything wrong, please excuse me. But it's Marie Antoinette and one of her sisters they all have names that aren't their names because they use the French versions of their names. But she's Carolina, I think, but she's called Charlotte in the book because that's the French version. So she goes to marry, is it Ferdinand I of Napoli, who's apparently this awful person, and Marie Antoinette obviously goes to marry King Louis, whatever number he is, of France. And then we have the revolution that happens a little bit later on, which I think also happens in other places apart from France. Like I said, my history's shocking, but that is who the characters are based on. And it starts off when they're children and they find one of their governesses is murdered, and they find this embroidered book that she had, and it's blank, it has nothing in it, but then they check it again and they reveal a bunch of spells. So then they start performing the spells, and as they go off to be queens of these other countries, they continue to practice magic and seek out other people who can also practice magic. But like I said, I have spoiled myself a little bit for this by looking up the real people. So these two girls were apparently quite close in childhood, but eventually as they grew up and became some of the most powerful women in Europe, they also became rivals. And so in this book, they're like the closest siblings. They're very, very attached to each other, but they know from such an early age that their job, like their duty to their family, even though they really don't want to do it, is to go off to other countries. They live in Austria, they're from Austria. Their job is to go off to other countries and marry to further strengthen the family that they're from and like build alliances throughout Europe. So they know that they might never see each other again after they get to a certain age. And I'm really interested to see what happens next. I'm at the point where they are. I don't think Marie Antoinette has gone to France yet, but Charlotte has already gone to Napoli, which I listened to the audiobook. I am right in saying Napoli, right? Because I listened to a sample of the audio to see if it was worth listening to, and they said Naples, and I'm sure that's not right. I'm sure it's Napoli. But anyway, Charlotte has already gone there, so that is like, I'm at the point where their lives are starting to diverge, and I'm really excited to see how this plays out, which I'm so shocked by, because I really didn't think I was gonna like it, but something about this is really doing it for me so far.
Stopping by just to tell you I hope that you understand why these things on my mind keep me up at night. Maybe you are the answer, but lately I'm so alone, stone cold, romanticizing our love has got so much worse. Now I lose my turn to say you.
Good morning. I have a Waterstones parcel, and it is honestly, it's a guessing game what I'm receiving from Waterstones these days, because they still have not sent me any of the indies that I placed in that massive order, which you have. If you remember last week, do you remember you had a little hair on your lens? You still got one right there. It's like trapped in the side. I need tweezers, but yeah, they still haven't sent me any of the indies that I ordered. I've had a pre-order that I've like ordered before I placed that massive order, and that is it, because I don't think any of the pre-orders that were in that massive order have come around yet. So I don't know what this is. I'm going to take a guess that it is The Butcher and the Wren, which is a thriller that I pre-ordered, but that's only because I know that's been released recently, and I feel like it's more likely that we have a pre-order coming through, but let's see. I think I was right. Yes, it is The Butcher and the Wren by Elena Urquhart. This is weird for me to pre-order a book like this, I know, but the author of this is actually one of the hosts of the podcast Morbid, which if you guys have been around for like the last year and have heard me mention this, I do mention it pretty frequently. I only listen to 2 podcasts actually. The main one is Morbid, so I'm up to date on Morbid, and I'm also working backwards. So they're up to like episode 300 and something, which I'm caught up on, and then I'm working backwards and I'm like around episode 200 backwards. So I listen to this religiously. Like, I'm going to make candles this afternoon. I'll probably listen to 2 or 3 episodes of Morbid. So when Elena said she was releasing a book, I wanted it. It is also signed, I believe. Yeah, which is pretty cool. And this is set in Louisiana, and I think it follows a serial killer and like an investigator or something. Is she a forensics examiner actually? Forensic pathologist called Dr. Ren Muller is in turn stalking the serial killer. So hopefully I'll be able to get to this sometime in spooky season. It is actually smaller than I thought it would be as well. It's like 242 pages, so a pretty quick read.
Because I couldn't sleep when you said it's everything else in your life didn't
Happy Friday afternoon. It is 2:30 and I'm going to be spending the rest of my evening labeling all of the fall candles ahead of shipping them next week. So they go on sale tonight and I'm anticipating, because it's the fall range, it's normally quite a busy one. I'm anticipating there being quite a few orders, so to save me some time next week, I could have had the afternoon off, but I'm doing the good thing and I'm going to label all of these ahead of time. So we got quite a few candles here. So this is double stacked. There is a massive stack here with 6 rows. This is 3 rows. I think that's about 130ish, 145, 35 candles, something like that. And there's another 25 or so in the kitchen that are just finishing off. But I've got my thick old stack of labels and I'm going to be watching Catfish and labeling. This is the benefit. This is something that I really love about doing what I do. Like, is labeling 160ish candles tedious as fuck? Absolutely. But I get to sit on a beanbag and watch Catfish while I do it, which is the benefit. So I'm treating it as like a real chill afternoon, because I actually really like packing orders as well, because after all of the postage labels are printed, it's just like a really therapeutic kind of monotonous thing to do that's also really satisfying, because every time like you check an order off the list, like the number goes down, so it really satisfies like the productivity needs inside of me, I guess. I'm just hoping, because I brought a whole ton of stuff in here, that Brie is not going to tear it all to shreds, because I wouldn't normally work in here. I'd normally work either on the kitchen table or in my office, but I didn't want her to be alone all afternoon in a crate, so I've moved everything into here, and she has been getting a little bit better behaved with a few slip-ups. So yeah, I'm just hoping that she doesn't decide that she wants to eat candles, because then I'm gonna have to move all of these trays that I've just dragged into here. Are you gonna be good? Are you gonna be a good girl? Are you? No. Are you gonna be my good girl? Maybe. We might be alright. Also, I've got to tell you guys, but I completely snapped a nail in half today, and I'm really upset about it because I love this set. So hopefully I can get this one repaired, because it's still like 2 weeks until my appointment. Oi! Give me this. Let go. Thank you. No dickhead behaviour today, please. I just got, you know, the Waterstones parcel once again. No idea what this is. And unlike last time, I actually can't guess. I can't even tell if it feels like 1 book or 2, but let's have a look. I'm intrigued. You know, the good thing, the only good thing about this thing that's happened with Waterstones and them not actually sorting people's orders out properly, is that every package is a mystery package, because I have no idea whether this is an indie, a pre-order, something they just forgot to send me. It's a paperback, which I'm sure means that it's an indie. What is it? It is Shadowlands by Stacy Marie Brown, which, yes, so happy that they are finally starting to send the indies that I've ordered through, but I am so desperate to continue with this series, and this one is book 6. So I don't think this was a pre-order, which means that my indies are finally going to come in, which is great, because like I said, really want to finish this series. So this one is an indie. I feel like I'm doing like an old school, you know, like just typical booktube video, like a stand-up, which I don't do anymore, I sit down. But Shadowlands is the 6th book in the Savage Land series, which is an indie fairy romance that's kind of like dystopian urban fantasy almost, following this girl called Brexley, who is the ward of the king, and her father was actually this esteemed general that died. So she was taken in by the king, she's fallen in love with her best friend, who's the prince, but they can obviously never be together. And from her position of privilege, she like tries to give back to the poor by stealing drugs from the trains that transport them throughout the city and passing them on to the black market, so that the money goes into the hands of people who need it as opposed to the elite. And one day when she's doing this, she's caught and thrown into a maximum security prison, where she meets this really sexy guy who looks like Jason Momoa called Warwick Brown. Arguably, this series is not the best. It's kind of formulaic, pretty repetitive. The writing's decent, but not like the best thing I've ever read. But they're so addictive, and as soon as you get to the end of one, you want to start the next one. So fingers crossed that this means that books 3, 4, and 5 are also on their way to me.
The dark when I'm in solitude. You are the spark.
just about to head out, but it's time for this week's outfit of the day, except we don't do this daily. Maybe it's the outfit of the week, because let's be real, I only dress nicely like once a week. But this is what we're going with. I was a little bit unsure at first about the cardigan with the skirt, but I like it. It works. What do we think? Did I make the right choice here? If any of you guys end up wondering where this cardigan is from, I actually made it myself. I've been knitting for over 20 years now, and this is the first like wearable piece that I've ever made outside of like a hat. So I'm real proud of it, but I will put the pattern down in the description box. I got it off Etsy, and the wool is from Wool and the Gang. It is crazy sexy wool. So yeah, we're going into York. My bestie is coming through and he's meeting us there, and we're just gonna have a day in York. I feel like I've had a lot of these recently. I do go into York pretty frequently because it's the closest city to me, but not normally this frequently. But I'm not mad about it because I love York. It's like one of my favorite cities in the country.
I know you needed me, but I needed you more. When did this love become about keeping score? I don't know, but I'm trying to figure this out on my own.
So I'm home and I managed not to do too much damage today. I mainly went to Lush and restocked my bath bombs because my bath bomb drawer was empty. So I got a bunch of the new like Halloween and the Christmas stuff's already out as well. They do also do, which I've never read, One Piece, but for some reason Lush has One Piece bath bombs, and one of them, the one that's shaped like a mushroom, smells really, really good. So I did pick up that one. But the most exciting thing that I got today was a couple of ceramic pumpkins. We have more spooky season decorations, but of course, as you guys know me, they're actually for all year round. So these are from Just Smile Designs. There's a little shop in York. It is like an independent artist and just like her little shop. I will put her Instagram, and if she has a store or anything like an online store, I will put that down in my description box. But they are ceramic, they're painted. This one has bats around the edge and this one has ghosts, and I'm not sure where I'm putting them. I was gonna put them on the fire, but I'm actually really running out of space. So I'm sat on the dog bed right now, by the way. So yeah, those were my only really exciting purchases, unless you count the fact that I did buy food because it was actually the York Food and Drink Festival today, and I picked up some brownies because Brown and Blonde, which is my favorite brownie company, I order from them a lot, they were there, and I actually first found them in York at I think the Christmas markets. And I also picked up some Scotch eggs because I'm a sucker for an artisanal Scotch egg. But yeah, some food, some pumpkins, and some bath bombs. In terms of reading, I do want to talk to you about my book, and I might talk to you guys a little bit later tonight. It is currently 6 p.m. So I had quite a large lunch, so I'm not going to be making any more food. I probably have a Scotch egg, and I need to walk Brie, and then I'm just going to settle down for the night and try and finish my book, I think, for I have a fortnight date with Ryan and Curtis. So I'm on page, I actually can't tell you, I think I'm around page 500. So I have like 140 pages left. I'm hoping to finish sometime tonight, maybe, we'll see. But I am very much enjoying it, and I'm really, really invested, even though like these are real people. So obviously like I know what happens to Marie Antoinette because she's a historical figure, but I'm still really invested in what's going on. We're at the point as well where like the queens are having affairs, like they've taken lovers, which I believe is pretty well known about them, and all of royalty really, because obviously they don't typically choose who they want to marry. So yeah, we're at that point where they have lovers, and I'm really, really invested in it, and I'm enjoying this book way more than I thought I was going to, essentially.
Take me to paradise and call me back home. Make me feel young again as I'm growing old. There's some things you can't control, but I think I know a thing or two about love, 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 love. They'll steal it when you need it, and they'll give it when you don't. Love, 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 love. You know you won't say it, but you're praying that you won't. 'Cause what if you love someone, love you they don't?
once in a lifetime astronomical event where Jupiter is the closest it's ever going to be to Earth, like in our lifetime. And the next time it's this close, it's going to be 107 years. So I have perused the night sky, and as you guys can see, as I'm like panning you, I know you can't see a lot, but as you guys can see, or can't see would be more appropriate, there isn't a lot going on in the sky tonight. I mean, I can see plenty of stars with my eyes. The sky's pretty clear. We've got quite a lot of constellations going on, but obviously it's hard to pick up the night sky on a camera until you get this little guy here, who is officially the brightest light in the night sky tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and guess that this is Jupiter. I gotta be honest, I thought it would look a little bit more impressive than this, but once in a lifetime, I guess. There she is. Wow, that zoom was more than I expected it to be. That is that. Oh my god, no, that's normal. Wow. Okay, anyway, we're finally making some progress because last night, this is not correct. You are way too close to my face. Anyway, we're making progress because last night I finished the embroidered book and I'm really depressed now. I can't lie. This, I knew that this was not going to end well. It was obvious that this wasn't going to end well because of the subject matter. We all know what happens to Marie Antoinette. Didn't know what happened to Charlotte, to be honest, but we all know what happens to Marie Antoinette, and it went exactly the way that I expected it to, that everybody expected it to. But it's obviously like, it's not a book that has a happy ending, but I loved it. I really, really liked it. Something as well about this is that I was so invested in the characters, even where, like I said, I spoiled myself multiple times for this because I kept looking up the sisters and like what they were doing, what they had done, etc. So I already knew what happened to Marie Antoinette anyway, because it's like very well known, but I knew the general gist of what was going to happen at certain points because I kept at different points throughout this book, I kept googling people, like side characters, the main characters, and like deep diving into their lives as we were going through, but I was still mostly invested in them as people and what was going to happen. And I didn't really realize how emotionally invested I got into this book until the French Revolution really started to kick off, and it was really difficult to read because I've been reading from Marie Antoinette's perspective for like a lot of this book. While I was actually more invested in the lives of the queens than the magic and the magical plot line in here, I will say I really liked the magic system and the way that the magic worked, and I feel like it really added to how like sad the end of this book is, and like this how sad the end of Marie Antoinette's life is, because to cast a spell in here you have to have a sacrifice that is equivalent to the enchantment that you are trying to cast. So the type of things that you will sacrifice in here is like memories, love, hope, treasures. And so at various points throughout this book, you can see that these queens have sacrificed so much that they have less and less left to give, and you can see like the gaping holes in them as people that casting these enchantments has like left. And especially as we got to the end and like the climax of the magical plot line in here, it was particularly poignant, like the sacrifice and the level of sacrifice to match like the level of enchantment that was being done. But that being said, I don't understand the point of the final like enchantment in this book, because I get that it was a big deal and it impacted me emotionally with how much of a big deal it was, but I didn't understand the point of it because Charlotte loves her sister and they drift apart throughout the course of their lives as they are the queens of two different countries that have different things going on. They have different political goals, and for a lot of this book, even though they still love each other as sisters, like politically and magically they are at odds, but ultimately like they are still the people that they love the most in the world and would still kind of do anything they could for each other. So at the end, I felt like Charlotte's main goal was to save Antoinette, but obviously we know that Antoinette is not saved, and it's not a book that paints history in a different light, like, oh my god, like we have a different outcome to what actually happened. What actually happened in life happens in this book. So Charlotte can't save Antoinette, and you know this all the way through if you know anything about Marie Antoinette, that like it's not going to end well for her. So I didn't really understand the point of the magical like conflict, like the like thing that everything built up to in here, and the final like thing that happens with that. I didn't really get it, but it was super enjoyable. I was really invested, and I'm shocked because I thought I was going to be DNF in this. You all know I didn't want to read this book. Nothing about it sounded appealing. I thought it would be really boring, but I loved the characters, the atmosphere, and the writing. So this is the reason, okay, why I have like the Goldsboro subscription, even though on the surface like a lot of the books that they're sending don't sound like anything I want to read. And it's also why I do things like the Unhaul project, because I'll read a synopsis of a book, decide that I actually don't want to read it, that it's really not for me and it doesn't sound interesting at all, and then end up loving it and giving it 4 stars. The only reason why this didn't get 5 stars is because of the fact that I don't feel like I understood the plot. Like, I don't know what the purpose of the book kind of was. I like that it really made me feel connected to the characters and how invested I got in it, to the point where I was researching things about these characters that like actually historically happened, and found out that like Maria Carolina is the grandmother by marriage of Napoleon, which is interesting because Napoleon actually causes quite a lot of trouble for Maria Carolina after kind of like the plotline of this book, but he ends up marrying her granddaughter, I believe. So I like how invested I got. I can't believe that it's the historical element of this book that I loved over the magical element. Like, what is happening? But I didn't understand why. Like, I don't understand Kate Hartfield's point, and that could be as well because I don't know the history. The only history I know is what I've learned through this book and what I've googled because of reading this book. But I didn't understand the point of the plot. It was very enjoyable and I loved reading it. I didn't understand what the point of the plot was, so I don't feel like I can give it 5 stars. Like, it didn't reach that level of enjoyment, because when I got to the end I was like, okay, I loved it, but I don't get what the point was. Like I said, could be me. If you've read this book and you know the point of the plot, let me know. So a success where we didn't expect to find one, which bodes well for our next book, which is the one that I thought would be in the middle of the rankings. It's the one that I had potential to enjoy, but still wasn't 100% sold on it, and that is Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca Bay. This one is this the April book for Goldsboro? I'm so behind, guys. We're going into October in like 4 days, but I think that this is the April book. It is a low-key Gatsby retelling, I believe, that is set obviously in the 1920s. I believe it has a lot of the glitz and glamour and decadence of the 1920s. I think I heard that it's sapphic, but don't quote me on that until I get into it a little bit. And there's also a magical element. So that is all I know about this. I am hoping to move through this one a little bit quicker than I read the embroidered book, but it is quite a bit shorter. The embroidered book was actually 655 pages, which I thought it was actually closer to 500 when I picked it up. And this one is only 416 pages. So I definitely 100% want this read before the end of September, because this is only my 4th book of the month. It's my own readathon, and we're currently like, this is one of the worst reading months I had this year, and this year has not been a very good year in terms of reading for me to start off with. But ideally, in the ideal circumstances, I would like to finish this vlog before the end of September, which I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Becca, you're dreaming, and I think you're right, but we're still gonna try. Hey, it's me. I am having one of those days where like I have lots of things that I need to do, so instead of like picking one and sticking to it, I'm just hopping between things. So I started off by proofing a video. I then went and finalized artwork on my computer for bookmarks that I need to send in for printing. I then skipped to packing orders. I then cut it like after half an hour of packing orders, filmed an unboxing, and yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place. But I wanted to show you guys a couple of pairs of glasses that were sent to me by Zimph. So Zimph are a eyewear like glasses brand. You can buy like a variety of different types of glasses from them. These ones are prescription because, as you guys know, am I nearsighted? I can't see distance, but they do prescription lenses. They're super affordable. Like, one of the pairs of frames that I got are like $27, and I think you get your clear lenses at no added cost. And then you also have the option of different filters, like blue light filters and all of that kind of stuff. So I have 2 pairs that we're going to open up and try on, and all of the links to these are down in my description if you would like to get a pair for yourself. They do have like a selfie try on feature as well, where you can like upload a picture and try on the glasses to see how they look. Full disclosure, if you do purchase from Zimph, I do get a small percentage in commission. But we have 2 pairs. Whoa, I am so sorry guys, that was nearly a disaster. Are you okay? Where was I? I am a real big fan of plastic frames these days. It started off with that pale pink pair that I have, but now I love, and also light colored frames. I used to be a big fan of black frames. Love me a light colored frame these days. So these ones are the Aphrodite glasses in tawny, and I gotta say, I love that we have a lot of Greek goddesses within the names of the glasses ranges. So let's try these ones on. Oh, okay, so we have like a nice wide size. I like myself a big frame, so the size of these is good. And oh, we like the color as well. This looks really good with my new lighter hair as well. My hair needs washing, which is why we have this like straight back no fringe deal going on. Oh my god, yeah, I really like these ones. So these ones are the, did I say the Aphrodites? And then the second pair we have are the Athenas, and these ones are very pretty. So you get like your kosher glasses cleaning cloth, which I have had out. They come packaged a little bit nicer than this. I took it out to clean my glasses because I have so many of those cloths and I have no idea where they go. But these ones are the Athenas in black and gold, and I think that these ones might end up being my favorites. The lenses are just a little bit smaller than I normally wear, like the size of the frames. But look, we chic, we gold, I like it. Do you like it? Does it look good? What do you think? So if you also cannot see for shit, maybe try checking out Zimp. The link to Zimp and also the frames that I have are down in the description box. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit, just a smidge, just a tad, about Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. I'm not going to say much right now because I don't know what's happening with that book, but I was just bored reading it last night. I'm on page like 105 and I kind of thought like, okay, because the first section is 105 pages, so I was like, we'll get to the end of the first section and if I don't care, like, I'm DNFing it. I still haven't really decided how I feel. Like, I got a little bit more interested in that very last chapter before the end of the part, but it's still also not like the best thing that I've ever read, so I don't currently know what we're doing about that, but I will keep you posted when I get to like the 200 page mark. Hopefully I'll know for sure if I want to be DNFing it, and also I can tell you a little bit more what it's about. But it's just, I don't feel like there's anything about this book that grounds it in the 1920s, aside from that the synopsis says that it's the 1920s, you know, like I'm just not feeling it. And it's not holding my interest because of the writing style. It's definitely Gatsby-esque, I will say that. But I love The Great Gatsby and I'm not loving this so far. So it's on thin ice right now. Good morning still, I think. Yeah, it's 25 past 11. It is the final day of the Bookathon. So I'm going to be doing sprints all day on my channel, starting at midday and going till... Last year we did until 8 o'clock. This year I might go later. It depends how I'm feeling. But I have been avoiding talking to you guys because I feel like I'm avoiding saying that I've DNF'd Wild and Wicked Things. I still have not made my mind up, and I'm going to make my mind up a little bit later on. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. I don't know. I'm on page 105. What I read wasn't capturing my attention. Didn't like the writing style. Something that I really don't like about this book is the way that it's like holding suspense, or trying to hold suspense, in that there's things about the plot that you don't know, and instead of kind of referring to them in a way that makes you want to keep turning pages to find out what it is that people aren't saying, that's just talking around something in that way. You know how somebody might put on Twitter, can't believe you all support this really problematic author, but they won't say who the author is? It's like that in book form. It's like when you're baiting someone to like ask you like, oh, who's the author, or like, oh, what's happening, and it's just not, it's irritating. As you guys know, when you see it on places like Twitter, it's annoying, it's not engaging. So that really bugged me. Was it yesterday? It could have been the day before. I did pick up and start the Collarboned by Rebecca Zahabi, and my idea was, it's like, oh well, I'll start this and then I'll come back to this. At the minute I haven't come back to this. As I said, I'm doing sprints today. They are dice sprints which require me to switch between books, so I may come back to this one. But I was thinking that I wasn't giving this a fair chance because I was only 100 pages in, and like you can't tell whether a book's going to be good 100 pages in. But I'm 102 pages into this one and I want to continue, whereas this one I will do anything to avoid picking it up. So it does look like this is going to be a DNF, but because I can't make a decision to save my life and I'm a dithery as fuck person, we will be waiting later to decide what's actually happening with this one. But this one, I'm a little concerned about the fact that I like this because it is the first book in a series, but I personally prefer my fantasy, especially high fantasy like this, to be much longer than 350 pages. When I'm going into fantasy that's this big, I am often very wary of it, but I went into this not knowing really anything about it aside from that it was an adult fantasy with a guy who had a collar, like a gold collar around his neck, and there was a woman who has a tattoo on her face, and the guy recognizes the tattoo but he can't remember why. I didn't know it was a magic school story, and I also didn't know that there was kind of like telepathic fighting in here, and that was like the basis of the magic. So this is predominantly set in a magic school called the Nest, and the reason it's called the Nest is because it's thought that winged giants created it. It's also on the edge of a cliff, and on the back it says the castle stood out on the horizon beyond the world abruptly ended. I thought that they were being like dramatic and metaphoric here to like describe a really big cliff. Literally, this castle is on a cliff at the end of the world, and there's like stars below like the cliff because it's the end of the world. You're just looking out at nothing essentially. So I'm wondering how that's going to become relevant, and I'm finding that it's very interesting setting. I'm still a little bit confused on like the specifics of everything because it is quite early days for a fantasy, and some of the things are like you're being shown things, not told, which is something that I do appreciate. But normally in like fantasy with a complex magic system, I do like an info dump at the beginning, just saying. But it will kind of like show you a battle and then describe the mechanics of it as it's going on. So we're following this girl called Isha who has a tattoo on her face, and it's normally the Kerr who have tattoos, and as far as I can tell, the Kerr are kind of like, they remind me of the other casts in the Girls of Paper and Fire series. They're animalistic, I guess. They have like horns, and the way that they age is actually super interesting, but they're considered lesser beings. And this girl has a tattoo on her face, but she's not one of the Kerr, and people are horrible to her because of it, and we see lots of prejudice throughout the beginning of this book and the way that she has to struggle for anything because people assume that she's one of the Kerr. We're also following a guy called Tatters who has a collar around his neck which makes him a slave, but it's unclear who his master is. I think we know who his original master is, but it's very clear that he's been on a journey and like suffered some ordeal to be able to remove the connection that his master has to his collar. But because of the way that this story is told and that you don't get all of the information about the magic at the beginning, I don't really know the specifics of either of like the tattoos, the Kerr, or the collars at this moment. The magic system in here is telepathic, and the way that it's mainly been illustrated so far is in the form of, are they called mind brawls? But essentially you have a person that creates, like, imagines a stage, and you have two people who duel, and they do this to train, like, you can destroy somebody's mind, but the purpose of the person who imagines the stage is to kind of stop that from happening and to protect both parties and also be impartial. And then the two people who duel, it's essentially an imaginary fight. You can choose to fight any way you would like to, so you can kind of try and figure out what would embarrass your opponent and like shame them in such a way that would make them concede, or you can even like imagine a sword, but you would have to like imagine everything about it, like how it would feel when it hurts you. So like if you wanted to imagine your opponent dead, you would have to imaginarily feel and create what death, or like what you think death would feel, if that makes sense. I do find it very interesting, and that's surprising to me as well as somebody who really likes a concrete magic system, because this is all imaginary. Like, it's imaginary fighting that does imaginary damage, and it's not even real, because like if you stab somebody with a sword and you've never been stabbed with a sword, it's not going to be a realistic feeling that your opponent feels. It's just going to be what you imagine being stabbed with a sword feels like. So it's definitely intriguing, and I'm having a good time with it. So last day of September, last day of the Bookoplathon, I have 250 pages left in this and 300 pages left in this. So in the case of doubles, I think I am going to switch between the two, but my priority is definitely Collarbone because I'm enjoying this a lot more. This one's a possible DNF, and hopefully, because this isn't too big and it's not dense, but like there's obviously stuff about the world and the magic system that I'm getting to grips with, which makes it a little bit slower to read while I start to understand the terminology and such, but like the actual writing itself isn't dense. So I do think that's doable, providing that I can knuckle down and concentrate, which I have had a little bit of a productive morning and got a lot of stuff done like in the house, because I find that I can't just sit and relax in a messy room because I'm always thinking about, oh, like maybe you should hoover that, maybe you should tidy those things up. So I've already done all of that, so hopefully I can have like a peaceful reading experience for today. And also I need to go and fix this because Curtis was asleep when I had a shower this morning and he's not feeling very well, so I didn't want to wake him up, so I didn't blow dry my fringe, and now it's curly and has a gap in it, which I can't. We need to sort that out. decisions, which means that we are pretty much at the end of this vlog. So last night in bed, I did finish the Collarbone by Rebecca Zahabi. It was a push. I don't know what it is with me. It's not actually me in sprints. It's just me in concentration. My concentration is so bad. And I just find it especially noticeable when I'm doing sprints, because obviously I know exactly how long I've been trying to read for and how many pages I've read. But all I accomplished in sprints yesterday was to finish this book, which was 250 pages to be fair. This one, we did actually roll a double and I opted not to swap to this one. So I have come to the decision that I'm going to be DNFing this at page 105. I am sad about it, but when you compare it to this one, which wasn't an especially high rated book for me, I'll get into what I thought about it in just a second, but when you compare them in that this was compelling enough for me to finish it out and this one was just not holding my interest at all, there is not one single thing that I wanted to return to this for. I do just very much think that this one is not for me. So I truly just didn't feel like there was anything grounded in it in the setting. I did not know that this was the 1920s, except for the synopsis told me that it was. I didn't feel like we were describing, because there's a very distinctive aesthetic and fashion about the 1920s that wasn't even described in here. This could have been set in a very small coastal town, so something that's not like at the forefront of social advancement because of how isolated it is, but it could have still been 2022 for all this book did. Like, there was no atmosphere to this at all. That being said, I do feel like there was atmosphere within the writing when it comes to the feel that the author was trying to create of like etherealness possibly, but it just wasn't descriptive enough. It wasn't grounding me in the setting. Just nothing about this felt concrete. I don't know how old the characters are in this book because I'm pretty sure it never said. It was dancing around kind of ballpark numbers and events that would help me place the ages of any of the characters. It might be something for somebody else. I think the writing was nice, but just wasn't anything for me, unfortunately. So then we come to the Collarboned, which I did enjoy, but I did sadly give it 3 stars. And this isn't a 3-star where I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I did actively enjoy this. I am just a little bit, I guess I'm a little bit harsher when it comes to rating like high fantasy because I read so much of it, and this could have done with being longer. Now I don't think that anything was weakly developed or anything. Like, I don't feel like there was necessarily a lack of development in here, but what there was a lack of is plot. So all this does is builds the world, introduces you to the 2 main characters and sets you up for an actual plot. There's no plot in here. The only kind of thing that we learn in the conclusion of this book is something that started to become quite apparent about a third of the way through about like who one of the characters really is, because there's mystery surrounding both of them, and we had the revelation about one of them multiple times throughout the last 100 pages of this book, but like when you start putting the pieces together it's really quite obvious much earlier on, which meant that the end felt kind of lackluster. And while I don't want to say that we were building up to nothing because there was no special build in this book, it did nothing in terms of plot aside from introduce you to 2 characters and put them in the place for a book. It's almost like a prequel to an established thing that already has a plot. That being said, I really loved the world building in here. I loved the way the Kerr were described. I feel like a little bit of more work could have been done on the Lightborn in here and the winged giants and that element of it, but I do really like the Kerr and the culture and the way that they were described, and especially the comparison between them and the mages. Now I haven't really told you what this book is about, and that is because, like I said, there is a very distinct lack of plot in here, but it is essentially hinging on a rebellion where we have an established social hierarchy that is not working. So the mages think they're above everybody else, the Kerr are oppressed, and then you have the ungifted, which are just the regular humans without magical abilities, who are pretty much just not mentioned at all. They're seen as irrelevant. So that is like the equilibrium, and then we have a rebellion that is trying to get equality for all of the group. So like they're saying that Kerr and ungifted are equally as important as mages, which sounds good in theory. The only problem is that the person who is running the rebellion is probably not the greatest, and the methods that they are using to achieve their goal are not ideal. So essentially they will kill anyone in their way. Like, if you don't agree, then you will die, and there's no like trying to talk people around. It's like a very much like, I will make you agree with me and come to my side. So it's just a different form of oppression if the rebellion won. And then we have our two main characters who are in between these two, where they don't agree with the beliefs of either of the parties, but they feel like they have to pick a side, because what are they going to do if they don't have a side? So definitely very interesting. Love the world building, really like the writing. Wasn't super attached to the characters, and there was no plot. Came out at 3 stars, but a like positive, like a 3.5 stars, where I'm really interested in continuing with this series. So that was the 3rd installment of Is the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship Worth My Money? And oh my god, I don't know what to say. I think I mentioned at the beginning of this video that what we're kind of aiming for is 50% of these books at least to be 4 or 5 stars. But I have said in the past that the reason why I wanted this subscription to start off with is because I feel like I'm only reading hyped fantasy, and I'm also catching up on fantasy. So I'm also reading a lot of backlist hyped stuff. Like there's stuff like, I haven't read Name of the Wind yet, so there's still stuff like that I need to read, and I wanted something to put fantasy that I wouldn't normally pick up into my hands and force me to read it, because otherwise I absolutely never would have bought any of these books. Even this one, which sounded interesting to me, I have so much adult fantasy that I want to get to before I even think about this, that I never would have read this book, and that was the whole reason why I wanted the subscription in the first place. And I feel like this is a perfect illustration of the reason why I wanted the subscription being fulfilled successfully, because my prediction for this installment was that this was the one that I was going to enjoy the most. This one had potential for me to enjoy it, and this one I thought that I was going to dislike. I really thought that I was going to DNF this before I went into it, because this did not sound interesting to me at all. But what we have is the one that had potential was a DNF. The one that I thought I was going to love, almost ambivalent about. And the one that I didn't want to read, absolutely never in a million years would I have picked this up. If you'd have given this to me for free or asked if I wanted it for free, I probably would have said no. And I loved it. 4 stars. I thought it was great. I really got engaged in the text to the point where I was like looking at information outside of the text to help my understanding of this book, and I had an emotional connection to it. So very surprising results from this installment. I am going to put our current graph up here so that you guys can see it. I haven't looked at it the entire time I've been filming this vlog, so I don't know where we're currently at, but we do have one more installment of this vlog to come, which will have the, I think, is it the June, July and August books in it, and after that we will have done a full 12 months of this subscription. And I think I'm going to be making an additional video after that, talking about like my favorites, my least favorites, and whether I'm cancelling the subscription or not, kind of like a wrap up of this little vlog series. So yeah, we can talk through the results in that video when it comes. But that does bring us to the end of the Bookoplathon, which I failed massively, and also the end of this installment of Is the Goldsboro Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship Worth My Money? So please do stay tuned if you like vlogs like this, if you like vlogs in general. Next week I'm mood reading in October, and I want to start the month off strong and not rely on my small TBR that I do have and go straight into mood reading. So I can't tell you what I'm reading. I don't know what's coming next week. It's hard for me to sleep last night not knowing what I was going to be reading today, let me tell you. But please do stay tuned for any of that if you are interested. Aside from that, thank you to everyone who's participated in the Bookoplathon. I've had a very unproductive reading month, and I know a lot of you guys have as well. It's wild. But some of you had a really great time and got a whole ton read. So I do hope that you enjoyed the Bookoplathon for this year. And of course, I do hope you've enjoyed this vlog if you've made it this far. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.